Hello and welcome to the Academy of Worship Podcast. I'm Lauren Levisor.
And I am Chris Davis.
All right, so recently I've been hearing a lot of people telling me that they're new listeners to the podcast, so welcome and thank you for listening.
Sweet.
We appreciate every single one of you, and hopefully we will be able to answer all kinds of questions.
Yeah, podcast is everywhere too, so you can look it up on iTunes and pretty much any other RSS feed out there. I've looked it up, it's all over. So, Academy of Worship.
Yeah, so last month we skipped. I had all kinds of stuff going on. My wife and I moved into a new house. My grandfather died, so I was down in Southern California for all of that. And but now we're back, and I think we've got an episode for you that will make up for the lost time. We have got our first ever guest in the studio.
Woo!
We have Rudy Gonzalez. He is the...
Say hi.
Hey guys, how you doing?
He's the production manager at the church that I go to, and so yeah, welcome to the studio.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Lauren, for having me. It's awesome being out here with you guys.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Love to chat production with you guys.
Awesome. So yeah, I was wanting to make sure that eventually we would hit the topic of smoke, fog, lights, all the production that happens on stage at some churches. It might not be happening at your church right now, but hopefully we'll be able to give you an insight into what may be in the future for you if you decide to go this direction. And so we've got Rudy here to answer all those questions for us.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
All right. So first of all, what is it that you do? What are you responsible for?
So I'm the production manager of the Father's House in Vacaville, California. And what that really means is everything that involves a live experience is what I'm a part of. So that's installation, speccing, any gear pertaining to video, lighting, and cameras specifically, creating events, creating stage designs, looks for conferences, events, meeting with bands that come in and touring the facility, doing all the normal stuff a production manager would do in the real world, and everything that a media director kind of would be in a church world. So, lots of fun, lots of cool things to do,
Lots of toys.
Yes, lots of hours.
Yeah. And I've seen the stuff, so it must be fun to play with. I know that.
Now, that sounds like a whole lot of stuff. How did you get into it, and did you kind of creep up on it in like one little area, or how did that all work?
So I started off at the church volunteering in 2006, and I just started doing lights. I've always been good at like technology stuff, so one of the pastors approached me and said, "Hey, what do you think about learning this?" I said, "Sure. How hard could it be?" It was actually really hard. But did that, started doing lights on it was a Hog 2 PC we were using back in the day, and from there just fell in love with it, fell in love with kind of the experience that you get to bring with all the production elements, adding to what goes on in the room during worship, and from there it just kind of snowballed. So I came on staff in 2009 as the lighting designer, and then in 2011 I took over as production manager and been doing that ever since.
Right on.
So it's just kind of a snowball thing, for sure.
Keeps building and building. Right on.
Wow. All right. So.
Oh yeah, actually I am. So the Father's House is currently in construction for a 2,000 seat auditorium in Vacaville. So just all the knowledge and everything I've gotten over the last almost decade now has come from the local church, and able to bring that and make an experience in a new building with all the expertise. So.
Wow. Yeah, because you get to go from ground up on that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's got to be cool.
Yeah, there must have been tons of stuff you learned from, because what are we, about 900 seat?
Currently, our facility is about 900.
900, yeah. So everything you've learned over the years in that facility going into the new one, what were some of the differences there? I mean, we're not in it yet, obviously, but planning.
Everything. So we took our current facility. So before I showed up at the church, it was already in existence, and we remodeled a thrifty drugstore, and made that into the Father's House as we see it now. So it really, we didn't know as a church like anything regarding production. So when I came on staff, or when I started volunteering in 2006, a lot of the people are just lay volunteers, not too much leadership in production to really know, not a lot of expertise in that. So nobody really knew how to function in a production environment. So all of the power was wrong.
That stays around no matter what. I think the power being wrong,
unless you get to build from the ground up.
Yeah,
Right?
Exactly.
That's true. Yeah.
So, to the types of speakers that were installed, to the way the room was designed, the way the acoustics work, it's a terrible room, but I call it like our current building, the Honda Civic of churches. So, when you're 16, you have a Honda Civic, you throw as much as you can in there, you lower it, throw the turbo on, you do all that stuff. And now we're in a facility that we can't do anything else in.
Right.
We are like packed out. We have no more room for movers, no more. That's it. So,
Oh no, I'm constantly tripping over everything.
Yeah.
That's been my experience with lights. Things in my way again. I keep tripping over it. Which actually, when you built those boxes around all the lights on the floor, that was a great day for me. Oh man,
Lauren went home happy.
Yeah, well, I hated that the bass players kept kicking my my up lights, and I'm like, how do I get them not to kick them anymore?
Right. So I have a question. I'm gonna back it up a little bit. So take me through what is production. So you said a production team, production manager, and I think that some people may know what that entails, but like come at it from an audience perspective. So I'm sitting in one of the chairs, and the first worship song starts. What, if not everything, what is it that I'm seeing, hearing, whatever, that you are behind kind of organizing and planning?
Or even pre-service if it starts that early.
Yeah.
So we absolutely always does start pre-service. So for our production, we roll in when the band rolls in. So call time is at 4:15 for us. Our service starts at 6:00 on a Saturday, and then we have our team meeting. We chat about the night, everything that's going to happen, who's getting up on stage, who's leading songs, what videos are playing, what verbal announcements are happening, how much time goes on our countdown clock for speakers, for worship. So we chat about the entire night. We want to mentally prepare for everything that's going on before we see anything on stage.
Okay.
And that helps us pull off excellence. It helps us pull off a production that doesn't have any distractions to take people away from what's going on stage or in the room. I guess our entire philosophy is pulling off excellence, not just for excellence sake,
Right.
but so that way people just can focus wholly on Jesus. So we think about it from anybody's standpoint coming in the room, not knowing, a visitor or whatever. We want them to come in, not pay attention to a lyric being wrong or a video not firing at the right time or whatever. We want them to experience what's going on. So that way at some moment, we can capture their heart to Jesus.
I got you.
So they can be a believer or not believer. So you backtrack. That's to sound check to our team meeting. We go through all of that to eliminate all distractions.
Okay.
So then we run through with lyrics. We do everything that the band's going to do.
Now lyrics, you mean what's being projected
Exactly.
on the screen?
So during sound check, while the band's running through their songs and doing all that, we make notes of all the lyrics.
Okay.
Camera shots, iris levels.
Cues and everything off of the songs and things.
Absolutely. Our church, we use motion backgrounds during worship. So we'll choose those, coordinate, lights with motion backs, an hour and a half before service, make sure it all matches, chat through all of that. And then that's all pre-service stuff.
Right.
So we think about all that in advance. And then when we go to that first moment of worship, we're able to, function.
So let me ask this. I'm sorry if I'm derailing the kind of thing here. Okay. So I do this a lot. Ask Lauren. I go off and we're on tangent now. So what, I don't know why this phrase keeps going through my head, but you remember when you dance and people would, with a girl, and they'd say like, "Hey, leave room for the Holy Spirit." So what during, what during worship, let's say that the band starts going off page or the Holy Spirit starts leading in a different direction and people, you think, okay, we didn't plan for this. What does that look like from a production manager's point of view? Like, what do you do? Because do you guys wear headsets and are you like communicating the whole time? And then what do you do in a situation like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a ClearCom party line system. So every camera person, every operator, every lyric guy, they're all on headsets. So we're all communicating the entire time.
Right.
I I got this phrase that I always use. It's preparation is the key to the anointing. So we don't create our services so rigid, or our tech so rigid that we're stuck in just running through a queue stack.
Gotcha.
We create our services for lighting, for instance. They're done in such a way that we can do anything on the fly. So if we're going to go into a tangent, a complete spontaneous time of worship,
Right.
we're not stuck to just hit and play on the next thing.
Okay.
The camera guys aren't stuck to go into a specific camera shot. Everybody just, we dance with the band in that sense. We don't want to, if God's going to do something in the room, we don't want to derail from that.
Right. Right. Yeah, I figured as much because I can't imagine that cause the band being that's my experience, that if the band's going off page because we're following the Holy Spirit, I can't imagine that you guys aren't doing the same thing out there. I've never thought about it, like how does that work?
Yeah, I've got to tell you, this is a whole new experience for me because being one of the guys up on stage just playing the music, I'm kind of feeling like we're a little bit of the rock stars now that just just whatever you guys are doing, we're just going to do our own thing. Because I had no clue what you guys are actually doing, but everything that happens every week is seamless and amazing.
Right.
And I just kind of take it for granted because I don't know anything about what you do. And so this is really eye-opening for me.
So would that be kind of a goal that not that you want to be ignored, but that what you do is so well done and done with excellence that people don't notice it? Like you said, you don't want distractions, so you don't want it to be a distraction noticing a distraction. Is that kind of a goal when you're going for it?
Absolutely. So no distractions, no opportunities for people to pay attention to something other than what's happening in the room. I've heard this term that production, tech, media, whatever you want to call it in churches, they're supposed to be ninjas.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to happen, but you're not supposed to know they're there.
Gotcha.
And so here's what people say all the time is it's a thankless job. The only
Sure.
time anybody ever says anything to production people or media techs is when something goes wrong.
Right.
And then they call you out on the mic.
Exactly. So when
Nice.
something goes
Rudy
wrong,
must be sleeping. The video didn't fire.
or when you hear feedback,
Right.
people look back to front of house and what's going on or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, do you do sound design as well? Is that part of your?
I don't do sound design.
I wasn't sure if that was part of it. Or
That's
not.
his twin,
Twin. Okay.
That's my best friend,
Yeah.
audio manager.
Robert. We got to have Robert come in sometime.
That'd be an interesting one. I'd like to have an audio conversation with another audio guy too.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah. You've been called out, Robert. Someone show him this podcast. So we
And they like blue M&Ms. So
send your writer ahead of time like Rudy did. Yeah. All right.
All right. So there have been times in worship where I've had that moment where just the band is clicking, Holy Spirit's dropping in the room, just everything's going amazingly, and your whole team has been spot on, and whatever lights are going on stage, the stuff I'm just enveloped in, like added to what I was doing. And looking back, I can go, yeah, I feel like I was able to bring something out because of the atmosphere that I was set down in, not only by the fellow musicians I was playing with, but the stuff that you guys were doing as well in the room. You were talking about building that atmosphere. Can you kind of speak into that a little bit? How do you build an atmosphere in the room with the technology that you have, and how do you fit that into what's happening sonically?
Well, I guess I'll just tackle this with lighting specifically. So, with theatrical lighting, movers, all the LEDs, haze, everything that goes on in the room, it's all to create an effect to help that atmosphere. So, when the band is rocking and there's we're going into a bridge and everybody's shouting out, what we like to do is really help that energy in the room. So lots of bright lights, adding to that room, and it just all of that energy. And then, when the band breaks down, and then we might go into just a little pocket where maybe just the acoustic is going, stripping down all of that to then create that same effect with lighting, with just what's going on in the room, and explode back up again when we go to the chorus. It takes people on that sonic roller coaster as well as a visual roller coaster. So I think a lot of the time when people, they talk about worship as just being the music that's going on in the room. Well, what if worship is also what's going on visually in the room as well? In Romans 12, it says, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, because this is the acceptable act of worship. So, I don't think worship is confined just to a band, an electric guitar, or piano, but everything. If somebody's painting on stage, could that not be worship? If somebody is dancing or jumping, is that not worship as well?
Right. David danced in worship, so I figure it's pretty good. If it's good enough for David.
Talking about the one where he exposed himself?
Yes, actually.
Okay.
That's one of them.
Y'all just need to get undignified.
Get undignified, baby. So would it be fair to say then, as you were talking about the visual matching what's going on sonically, would it be fair to say that you're just doing visually what the band's doing orally?
I would say that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it seems like.
Not just that, but we're...
Right.
It's the dance. It's just adding to the atmosphere. I've heard this statement before in a book. I think it was The Art of Curating Worship, where it's, how many church services do you go to that's like, you have to endure it, but I think church should be something that's encountered, experienced, rather than endured.
Sure.
I went to go watch Fantastic Four recently, and that 2 hours of enduring.
You endured that as well, huh?
Yeah. Didn't we see that coming, though? Really?
I mean, but then you watch like Ant-Man, and it was an experience. It was awesome.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Their production team stepped it up as opposed to,
Absolutely.
All right, so how do you know when is too far? How do you know when you've stepped over that line of creating and dancing to... You know what? Right now, it really is a show. We've turned this into something like, look at this.
That is the question, huh?
Gosh, Lauren,
We on the worship team, the musical part, we ask that all the time.
every time. Yep.
I don't think that's a one person type of comment. I think it is a
But you
leadership.
can talk for everybody right now. So no, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
absolutely.
You're the man in
No
charge.
pressure.
It all falls on you.
I think it is it's a team effort.
Yeah.
In the sense of, we have our senior leadership team, we have our production team, or the production leadership, and we get to chat about what is too much, when is too much smoke, when is too much flashing. I think stuff has to match. So if we're doing He Loves Us, and you're singing about a sloppy wet kiss and strobes going on, I mean, that's, it has to be tasteful. And I think some of the stuff that we can do is watch YouTube, watch other productions and see what goes on, watch other churches and see how they do things, and then say, is that tasteful or is it not tasteful? Does it look like a 13-year-old kid is running it, or does it actually look like, somebody professional is doing this?
So yeah, where do you get some of your influences from then?
iTunes Festival, YouTube stuff.
Really? Okay.
Coldplay.
So you just watch live concerts kind of thing, or shows?
I love watching live shows. Yeah. YouTube's like your best friend. One Republic, whatever.
The big show, yeah.
Why not?
Interesting.
Not to say that you're putting on a big show. I'm not trying to say that. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I'm old school, so I mean, I automatically think Pink Floyd.
Oh, yeah.
And,
You're not that old. You don't look that old.
That's my music, though.
Yeah,
I never got into new stuff. Joseph makes all kinds of pop culture musical
We're old men.
comments, and I'm just lost. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of bands right there that I know, but not all of them did I know. Yeah,
Coldplay, you don't know Coldplay?
I know them. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I know Coldplay.
I think it was in the contract
We're
I
just
signed
old.
when I became a member that I had to find out who Coldplay was.
That's right. If you don't know who Mute Math is, or
We don't listen to Mute Math. No,
Don't give me
no,
that.
but there's
everyone listens to Mute Math.
if it's on K-Love, we don't listen to it. No, but yeah, I mean, take musical influences from anybody. I mean, I guess if we live in a Christian bubble,
Sure.
and we're not taking influences or we're not learning, we're just going to regurgitate the same stuff over and over again.
Right. We can quickly become that church that people are enduring because it's the same stuff that's been regurgitated for the last 30 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, I learned from who cares? Just look at YouTube videos, concerts on TV,
Right.
VMAs. What's everything? What are MTV and the Country Music Awards doing? I mean, that's tight. I was watching the other day. What's that talent show? I don't watch that
like
stuff on TV.
America's Got Talent?
Yes, America's Got Talent. So,
Okay.
and looking at the LED screens and what they were doing in the room, like, that is tight. Just the visuals that they had with it, how they were running with the lights. I mean, like, if they're making a lot of money doing this, they're obviously paying like top dollar
sure.
for that type of set. Why not learn from them? I mean, in some churches, we have really strict budget, and you would.
What?
We do have a budget at TFH for but it's like we can recreate some of that stuff with our look with certain ways of projection.
So I have a question then.
Sure.
So creatively speaking, what are some of the things? And I asked this. I'll back up a second. So I saw a couple of things when I was researching lighting or something, and people were doing stage design and some stuff and showing there was pictures of stage designs people had done on a really, speaking of budgets, super low budget because they wanted a certain look, but they had like zero money, and so they went out and did crazy stuff. And it was like cardboard boxes painted a certain way, and then they lit it with certain lights, and then they put like they had like the screen that goes on your screens. Like in your house, and like they did that and lit that, and it looked all crinkly and crazy. And when you saw it, it was like, whoa! And they're like, yeah, it cost us $30 to like do this stage or whatever. I was like, what? So what are some of those stories you have, if any, that you've made something look really cool? That like if someone picked it apart and went, wait a minute, why are they putting a baseball bat right here or something?
Well, we did this one stage that was just a bunch of string, a bunch of like rope pulled very taut, and we shined LEDs on it. And when you looked at it on camera or live, it kind of looked like lasers in the air a little bit, going up the sides of the stage. We currently have this stage. It's perforated aluminum or perforated stainless steel. So it's like a speaker grill.
Okay.
So yeah, they're uprights. We shine LEDs on them, and they're painted a flat matte black. So during worship or during the word, they're lit. It pops. It gives depth to the stage for camera and all that. During worship, we turn them completely off. We solely rely on just like mover light and LED light from the ceiling pipes, and it creates a different look. It's more intimate. It's so I mean that only cost us a few $100s to make.
Right. So if someone was getting into, let's say there's a church that says, we'd love to explore stage design, something a little more creative than just this, what would be like if they called you in as a contractor or just someone to consult, what would be some of the first things you do? And they say, hey, we have a budget of like $500. Like what would you do as far as like, okay, what would be the first places you'd address?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
I want to make it hard. This can't be an easy interview.
I don't know. If they have lights,
Let's see, it's lots
it makes it easier. But if there's no lighting, that's a harder question to tackle because usually you want to shine lights on something to create a look. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Wood seems to be popular nowadays, so a bunch of like pallets on the back of your stage could look good. A lot of people like that kind of rustic look. I mean, with the glass light bulbs. So some of that hanging. If you can make it feel homey, if you have no production lighting, sure.
Okay. To make it look like a living room kind of thing.
Well, like maybe homey is not the right word, but
I've seen that
something that you would like see inside of like Urban Outfitters or something like that. A lot of that wood stuff. I don't know. I mean, you can probably for pretty cheap use fluorescent lighting. Even though I hate fluorescent lighting, but
don't you guys avoid that stuff?
We do.
If you're going to have cameras, that causes a problem, right?
Yeah. Well, and once you get cameras, there's a whole other realm.
Right. I'm just talking about $500, guys.
Of LEDs. Well, there is a thing called flickering LEDs and flicker-free LEDs. So, when you get to cameras, I mean, it just opens up. Yeah. You got the type of fixtures that you use, have to go up in quality. But man, I would love to do a stage design with a bunch of fluorescent lighting that had like some acrylic tubes on top of it. Mm-hmm. So that way you don't see like the white tubes, but you see like an orange tube or a purple tube or whatever you want to do. So,
yeah, it's fascinating to me. Just the stuff, just the small depth that I even looked at it. I was like, man, I never even looked at it in depth. So to have someone sitting here that I can ask like, so.
Yeah. And stage design and all these kind of sets or whatever, the props and those kind of things that create a stage look, is something that, again, I would never think of, but I've seen a ton of them come through in the 7 years I've been there now, that some of them have just blown my mind. Some of them were like, that was a hit and a miss, but swing and a miss. I think only one of those was.
Are you thinking about the one last year?
Yeah. Everybody was kind of scratching their head like, they tried really hard. But usually every single one is just like, wow, man, that looks amazing. And then,
we outsourced that one. When
it's someone else's
When
thing.
it came in, everybody was like, all right. Well, we have it.
Nice. We need a picture so we can put it up somewhere, right?
Say if a church was going from, like, they have a mixing board and a band, but they've never even jumped into this realm before of production and stage design and lighting and stuff. Like, how do you even get started?
Man, that's a tough question.
What did you guys have when you were still at Three Oaks Community Center?
I wasn't there.
That's true.
So it occurs to me that to even do this in a church, you'd probably have to have someone who has a heart to keep doing it.
Absolutely.
Because I can't imagine you'd call in someone like Rudy and he takes off. And
I feel like that's the key to success in any ministry in the church. You don't just do something because you think it needs or you think you should. It's like it takes somebody with a heart for it, and it takes the need for that certain ministry to even exist.
I can't imagine that when you got involved with it, it seemed, from what you described, it was very organic. So it wasn't like they were like, we need production design, go find somebody, and then you fell into it. It was probably like,
Hillsong has this, we need to do it quick.
Well, we do say that.
Called you out.
No, it was a little bit of an organic thing. I mean, there was some of the older members on the team were definitely passionate, sacrificed a lot of time. Now having been in it for almost a decade, there's a different structure. Man. I know. I do feel old sometimes. I pluck the gray hairs from my beard. So there is a different structure. There's not as many of the, I guess a council of the older people anymore, kind of adding to production. It's, I guess me kind of spearheading the charge with, Robert, the audio production manager. So we kind of bounce ideas off each other's heads all the time. I do have a bunch of people that I call just to bounce ideas off of each other as well. But I'm reaching for stuff that's above us. Like, the old production lighting guy for Jesus Culture, the production manager from Bethel. Like, if I have an idea or a question, or I'm like, how do you do this? Like, I'm reaching out to, grab an idea that's not part of our norm already. So, yeah.
So you don't have all the answers? Yeah, I don't know.
I don't. We've been fortunate enough to get connected with some really cool people.
Yeah.
So I'm always learning, from people who are doing it better than us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that kind of aspect of always pushing the envelope, reaching for something new. Because it's like, I remember one of the pastors at one point said something to the effect of, hundreds of years ago, all of the art, music, all the new stuff being created came out of the church, came out of these crazy artisans that were paid by the church to do certain things, to paint these things, to sculpt these things, to write this music. And eventually it got away from that, and the world did it on its own, and the church was just trying to catch up. And we're trying to copy the world to try to stay relevant and everything. And so they were saying, we long for the time again when the church is leading the forefront of every type of art.
Wow.
And the world has to stop and take notice and go, oh man, there is something on this. And so I always appreciate it when I hear people with a passion for what they're doing, pushing the envelope, trying something new. I
don't think we're there yet. We're hoping.
Yeah.
We're all trying. Yeah. With God's grace, man, we'll start leading the charge again.
So how do you change things up? How do you do things differently if it's, say, a youth conference or a weekend service? How do the weekend services maybe differ? Or just the different things that happen at the church that need the production team to do something?
Rent gear. Yeah, well, we're at a level. So right now we have a 900 seat auditorium. So for our youth conferences, we have 1,200. So we
Shh, don't tell the fire marshal.
we shove more people in our room than we can fit. We do have overflow in another building on our campus. Anyways, so we'll rent gear. We'll rent stuff that we don't own. Production equipment, lighting. It's expensive. So I mean, you talk about a standard profile fixture that everybody's using is like $8,000. I mean, jeez. If I want 20 fixtures, I don't have 160 grand to go buy all this stuff, but you can rent, some gear for pretty cheap. So, this year we did our youth conference. I rented a bunch of LED panels, and a bunch of lights, and it was like $8,000. But it completely transformed our room and gave us this cool dynamic look with LED panels, and all of our CG content, was custom made in-house for that. Changed the way lights look, push the envelope, make it louder, make it darker, rent subs, do whatever you need to. So, our normal weekend services are our baseline, and then we get to push, envelopes from there. So men's conference is in a couple of weeks for us, and we'll be renting, probably about 20 lights to bring in to add to our look.
Right.
Make it cool, make it an experience, not just, people are used to coming in for a weekend service and the lights are at a specific place, for months at a time. And we want to shake things up so it's not like a normal weekend that you're just paying for with a guest speaker.
Right.
So it has to feel, especially for conferences, it has to feel special. It has to feel something's different,
So yeah, if somebody's saying, well, why can't you just use what you have? Why isn't that good enough? Why do you have to spend all this extra money? And so you're really trying to capture that group of people that are coming for that special event in a way that you don't usually, because maybe this is the only time they're going to be in the building. And so is that kind of the...
No, man. No, I'm kidding.
I was just wondering how long I could look at you.
Did I just say something stupid? Did it not make any sense at all?
Happening?
No. Yeah. It has to feel different. It has to be, again, an experience. I don't know. I tweet sometimes, or I journal, and there's a statement that I always think about, and it's like, if I can capture your attention, then I can tell you about Jesus. So in an atmosphere of worship or a conference, if we can catch your attention at some point during that hour and a half session, we can tell you about Jesus, and something might change. So
yeah, I get that. That makes sense.
that's tight, huh?
That's good stuff.
Well,
That's what I was trying to get at, off air, I was talking to Rudy and just trying to tell him, hey, I have an aversion, not an aversion. That's the wrong word.
You've had questions.
I've had questions, yeah, about kind of the production and stuff, and I warned him that this was coming, by the way. So, I've had issues with kind of the top level show that in a lot of the bigger churches, you've got this kind of show, and that's really sometimes where some people, when they don't get to talk to someone like you or whatever, that's kind of where they stop, and so they kind of get turned off, especially if they come from a more traditional background. I noticed, like if someone's from, like for instance, the church that I lead worship at has a very traditional history. We're not as that traditional anymore, but I know a lot of those folks, if they ever stepped foot in a church like that and saw, some mist and some lighting, they'd just be like, and I'm done. Like that would be the first impression they would get, right? Is this is the rock show, where's Jesus at? And so when you say, if I can get your attention, then I can tell you about Jesus, that for me is almost a bridge to say, okay, I kind of get why that would be something you would think about in a church. Now, I'm not big on the whole like seeker sensitive thing, because I don't believe that we're supposed to conform to the world. I think the world needs to conform to the church, but I get that. So yeah, and go.
So, yeah. Well, I think, you always have to be mindful of the guests coming in. Sure. So what's going on in the world? I mean, not saying we have to play Led Zeppelin in the church, or like our worship consists of Coldplay songs, but
Although some do, and that's going to be a topic on one of our podcasts, by the way.
And do they really?
Oh, man. Lots of worldly songs.
I could worship to Sky Full of Stars,
I think that's one of the songs people play, actually.
But anyways, understanding that people are coming in the church that are, maybe they go to shows, or, if we're just singing hymns in a brightly lit room and it's, you got red velvet on the walls, that's a turnoff for some people.
Right.
When I grew up Catholic, so I was in a very traditional Orthodox type church.
Yeah.
And just anything Orthodox was a turnoff for me. So I wanted something that was kind of raw, kind of energetic.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Something that met you where you were at.
Absolutely. So, and, not that the church compromised on their theology. Right. They didn't compromise on, who Jesus was, or, what he's here to do. And there was something in the air that was authentic. The Holy Spirit, I know there's a lot of different views of who the Holy Spirit is and how he interacts with the church, but, we feel like at our church, God shows up. We call it the presence of God. He's in the room. And there's something, when I first walked in the room of the Father's house, I was just, I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that, how I was feeling in that moment was fantastic. Yeah. And I just, if that was God, I wanted to be in the room because I wanted to be where God was. So, but yeah, there are a lot of places that are against, lights and smoke and all of that.
No, yeah.
Everybody has their opinion.
Yeah. And, I think it's important to point out too, and I'm sorry if that put you on the spot. I wasn't trying to grill you, but
it's all good.
It's for me, it's all heart. Like, if a ministry is started and or continued with the wrong spirit and the wrong heart in it, then that's when I think it's definitely one of those like, whoa, why is this? Why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. But when I hear someone's heart, like Rudy here, who's telling us that it's about Jesus, like that's the goal, but we have these avenues and arts and things we can pursue that God gave us, right? It's nothing new that we can use to get them. Like that brings me into that. Like this is fine. I'm not against it. I'm not against it. I just, sometimes I see, and I happen to know at your church a lot of people, so I understand the hearts behind it. But I think there's a lot of really big churches that I kind of wonder sometimes. Like, okay, if you weren't on cable, would you, you know what I mean? Would it go this far? So
I just wonder if it's because we don't have a personal interaction with them that we don't really get their heart.
Exactly.
I think about this. Yeah. When they were building the temple, it pretty clearly laid out on how the temple was supposed to be built, right? Like rocks were supposed to be cut a specific way, and you're supposed to get these cedars from a specific place, and the curtain, it wasn't just red curtain, but it had all these intricate fabrics woven into it to make it look dope.
Red velvet, yeah. Sorry, I had to bring that back.
And then all the altars or whatever they were using were laid with gold and all that.
Right.
Why couldn't they just use wood or iron or, why is it a specific way? Now, we're not building a church. There's no clearly laid out thing about how, production is supposed to be in church or whatever.
Isn't that in Second Hesitations too, or whatever, lighting design? Yeah.
The Book of Jude.
Yeah.
But there's all these artworks and art forms that were going into building the temple, to make it look, attractive.
Yeah.
So nowadays in the church, the adoption of technology and, where we're at, we get to make the church beautiful visually. So we're doing it sonically already, with audio and, line arrays, and nobody ever really complains about how it sounds. The moment you start to add some of the flashy stuff, that's where there's hesitation, right? But what if, that is making the church more beautiful? What if it's making,
right on,
more attractive to those without?
Yep.
So,
and so,
awesome.
Like we've said, I came from the same church Chris is currently leading worship in. I was there for 14 years. It's the only church I knew, basically, besides, maybe going to Vacation Bible School at my grandparents' church down south and stuff like that. But, it's the church I was used to. It's very traditional. We created a contemporary service and all that, but it was pretty traditional. And then when God called me to the Father's house, it was a completely foreign thing to me. Obviously not my idea, but I'm like, okay, I'm along for the ride, God. I'll do whatever you say. And, I could tell that, yes, the presence of God was there. Everything seemed to be spot on, but there was still a lot of questions I had. Mm-hmm. And, I kind of came with that large churches are kind of weird kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are probably off and they're just wrong. and so having that in the back of my mind, whenever something would happen, like when we had that huge drum riser on the big wheels and everything, that was pushed right up towards that back door where we go backstage and we get all the equipment from and everything. Basically, the path of travel for all the heavy equipment that we use every single day.
Where my lights were,
and the lights were on the floor. I'm like, so let me get this straight. Like how the stage looks and the lighting is more important than our safety. Like automatically went there and just
you went to old man mode.
Yeah, it was like these guys don't care about us. They don't care about anything. They just care about how it looks. Exactly what we were, not knowing the heart behind it, not talking to the person, just assuming and just letting things go too far. And so if you're listening out there and this is starting to sound familiar, I encourage you to go talk to the people involved, find out their heart for these things, and just get into these conversations where questions are answered. Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest, man. I came into this kind of interview thing not real on board, not on board, but I kind of like what we talked about off air was like, I have these hesitations, but I want to say that last thing you said really made sense to me. Like that almost, I'm pretty sure my mind is much more on board now than I was. So I think God was using you in that. But, I think there is a thing to be said about the beauty. I think the temple was a perfect example in bringing that into the beauty. I think that just painted the perfect picture, no pun intended. And, I think that the heart behind it is also as important. And, having this conversation with you has really kind of made more sense to me than just there's lots of lights and lasers and smoke. It's a big show. So, I think you need to go talk to people. I think you're right.
Yeah. Oh, and just to kind of tag on to the end of that as well is the other thing for me was understanding that I may not agree with some of the decisions made, because I'm not the one making them. If I was in their position, I would probably do something different just because of who I am and how I do things. But that doesn't mean that what they're doing is wrong or that it's not coming from the right place.
So what you're saying is there's like a design by God about the body.
Yeah, totally.
How we're all different.
Because, there's stuff that...
That's perfect.
There's stuff that our worship pastor, he makes decisions on that I'm like, I wouldn't have done it that way. But that's because it's me.
I hope he doesn't hear this podcast.
No, I hope he does. He knows this. We've had conversations about it. We totally are different people, and yet I still come under him and support him, and I'm totally on the team, and I know that he has the best intentions for his ministry and for the church in everything that he does, so I support him in that. Yeah. So
it's all about Jesus, and as long as the leaders are all about that, I'm good.
For sure.
Right? Well, I think we're good. We're super long, which is our good because we're making up for the last month that we didn't do this, so it's good.
Anything else that you wanted to get in while you were here?
Well, I mean, let's open up a can of worms here.
Here comes.
No. I don't know. Just for me, you hear it all the time, people saying the church staying relevant, but, for us, I think we have to maybe stop looking at what our comfort level is and really understand what the next generation needs. I'm not saying the next generation needs lights, but, they're attracted to a certain thing, right? And if the church isn't what they're attracted to, the church is going to end up dying off. So, just understanding that, it's not all about us and our concerns and our needs. And perfect. I was reading this article the other day, and somebody wrote a letter to Billy Graham or some newspaper or whatever and saying, hey, I really don't like the music.
I read that.
Did you really?
Yeah, go.
So he's like, I don't like the music that they're playing in the church. And Billy Graham was like, well, maybe you need to ask God, just basically look inward about what's going on instead of worrying about what's going on, in your church or in churches like that.
It's not about what you like.
Exactly. So, and I'm like, that's perfect because maybe it's not really about me. Maybe it's about what's going on next. So, just a thought.
Yeah. Well, I think as long as people keep stepping into what God puts them into, like you've done, and I'm hoping like we've done, and then He's going to work. So
the awesome thing about me specifically, I came into the church not really. I mean, I had no idea this was a world that I'd be attracted to, and now because of the Father's house and because of where we're living at, I have an opportunity to step in the calling that I feel like God has for me. So when I'm in church on a weekend doing this, it's not just because it's fun. It's not just because I like it, but I really feel like this is, what I was tailor made for. So,
right. Amen, brother.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, cool, man. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm super stoked.
Yeah.
So, right on.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah. So, thanks for listening. Tune in next month and leave a comment. Ask us some questions you want us to answer. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks.
Peace.
Bye.